I had not turned the recording on, and in our like frenzy to let everybody in off the weight room. So hello, people watching the recording. You missed the really great story about how Lauren got to be CEO of Life360, but we're gonna get into it. Um, One of the things that I learned, I did not know this about you before I prepped for today's session, is that you are sort of a college dropout.
Sort of.
Um, Sort of. So tell us, like, and then you went back to school at 52.
That's
Um,
true. That's
and
100%.
you like finished your bachelor's degree. So like what is that?
What happened?
What?
So as I mentioned before the recording started, when I was in college, at the age that people go to college, I was sure I had conviction that I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to save the world. I wanted to help, to help people, particularly interested in civil rights law. I interned at the ACLU and did all the things that aspiring civil rights lawyers want to do. And in that pursuit, I had to write papers, and I needed a computer to do it, and I got a Mac. I happened to be at UC Berkeley, which was very much plugged into the emerging technical world, and the Mac community in particular. And I got involved with an off-campus group that was the largest Mac computer group in the world. And that became my hobby and my passion. It was sort of an accident. Um, and then I think it was 91, there was the big Oakland Hills fires, burned 3,600 single family dwellings, including the apartment that I lived in.
Oh,
And I took some incompletes. And so I actually did, the reason I say I sort of dropped out, I did the full 4 years that people do. I took all the classes that you're supposed to take, but I took some incompletes. And I thought, well, I'll just finish those papers when I'm ready to go to law school. But first, I'm going to do this computer project or that computer project or this opportunity. And those opportunities kept coming. And I looked back and it had been 30 years and I didn't finish my degree. And actually, it was only after the pandemic that I sort of took a few minutes and I said, I'm going to take a break. And I was living in Berkeley and I said, what am I going to do with my time? And ended up calling Berkeley and said, what do I need to do to finish my degree? And it was one semester on campus, full load, 4 classes. And I am now a college graduate.
okay, but that actually sounds super fun. I'm sorry to like
So
completely
fun.
interrupt people, but that sounds like really fun. If I could like go back to college, do nothing else for like 6 months on
Yeah,
campus.
you can. It turns out you
No,
can.
I actually
Like,
cannot. Like I have like 8 jobs, 2 children. No, there's just like there's. But tell me, can I live vicariously? What was it
yeah,
like? What
I
did
was
you
great.
take?
I walked to school. So I was a double major. So I took 2 rhetoric classes. One was like the rhetoric of autobiography. One was about law and literature. I took one poli sci class, and I had to take a science class. They had changed the requirements when I was an undergrad. Liberal arts majors like me had to do, I don't remember exactly how many units it was, but it was like 6 units of science, and they've upped that. And they grandfather you in if you went to school earlier, but the grandfathering lasts like 10 years. In my case, it had been 30 years. They're like, you do not get grandfathered in, you have to take another science class. And so I took basically an entry level, it's my first engineering class at Berkeley. It was an entry level biomedicine for engineers. And so I was in with freshmen, and it was wild. I was sort of the teacher's pet when they were talking about the product development life cycle. He would explain the product development life cycle, and I kind of raised my hand. I would say, well, not exactly. And he'd say, well, Lauren, share your experience. And I got to share a little bit more about how that works in practice instead of, sort of the professor's view of it. It was great.
They sound so fun. So did you
It was super
actually
fun.
like walk and like get your degree and everything?
So I walked back in,
Oh,
let's see, what year was I supposed to graduate? I walked back in 92 or 93 when I was supposed to graduate. I was that close. I was really just a couple papers away from graduating the first time. So I did not walk again. That seemed like a cheat, but I do have my diploma now.
okay, so I'm still super jealous. That's amazing. I'm gonna put it on my bucket list. Um, so you sort of finished college, not graduate college. You finished college. Did you go straight into Microsoft from there?
No, again, I was planning to go to law school and I was just kind of,
Um,
my one of my best friends teases me that I told her to wait to go to law school. She's been a very successful lawyer many years. I'm glad she did not wait because I have not gone to law school. I might one day, who knows?
Yeah, oh
Um,
yeah. Knowing you,
but
like,
yeah, so I was just doing projects. I was working for a bunch of startups and friends who were in the tech industry. I was writing articles and I was getting paid, just on these like small jobs. And I ended up working at a startup that was doing really innovative early internet things and also like not a real business. And we were not going to keep
oh,
being
the
able to pay the
90s.
bills. Yeah. And so we got bought by Microsoft. And that was like, it was a lifesaver for the business. It was like, it was so foreign to me because I never really thought about trying to get a job. I was just working on these projects that I was interested in, really for friends and people I knew through this club. It was very accidental. And I said, Microsoft diagnosed me as a PM. Like I didn't know what the industry was about. I had learned to write specs because somebody said, I was writing documentation and they, in the process of documenting things, I would say like, this is too hard to explain. Please change the software in the following ways. And one of my friends that I was working for who had been doing this and changing the software based on my asks in writing documentation said, could you just write the spec? And I said, yes. And then I went on the early internet and I looked up what is a spec and how do you write one? And that's how I started designing software. And so when I got to Microsoft, it was just me doing the things that I was interested in and learning that this was a career and that I was actually this thing that they used to call a program manager, they now call it a product manager. But it was me just making the things happen that I wanted to exist in the world, or, in the case of designing software, making it work better for like normal humans. And that's been a sort of a constant theme for me, is just thinking about how I want things to be. And then what do I need to do? What do I need to learn in order to affect that change in the world?
So you're at Microsoft from, I think if I'm getting this right, like mid to late 90s, all the way to 2015.
Yeah, 96 to 2015 by
Did the
accident.
company did
It
the
was
company
great.
change? Like, how did the company change in the time that you were there?
It sort of changed really dramatically and not at all. One of the shocking things about Microsoft is just how low the turnover is. I had a friend who went back that was at GoDaddy with me, and we had been at Microsoft together. She went back to Microsoft. She's like, it's all the same people in the same conference room. So a lot of things about Microsoft are consistent. I think it's technology orientation, it's orientation around people um, over the IP that's been created. The idea is the IP is always going to get old. You need the people who create the IP and sort of that orientation towards learning and reinvention. A lot of things like that are consistent. But in every sort of wave of technology, the company had to change radically. When I started, we created box software and we had a ship cycle that was a 3-year cycle designed to do that. I think one of the most exciting transformations that I lived in was the shift from that to cloud software. And we had to be a totally different organization. We had to reinvent how do you make software in a world where you can update the code all the time, where things move much faster. It was a complete reinvention. And I think that's why I'm so excited about AI in the world, because it's like that same sort of reinvention, which is a fascinating process. And, I hope I get to do it more times in my life.
So the transition from Microsoft, and I guess that there was a point to this line of questioning, which is like you're going from like a behemoth to a large public company to taking over for the founder of like a more recently IPO'd company. So what was that transition like? What did you have to kind of learn, unlearn?
Yeah. Some of the things are the same and some of the things are different. I think one of the things about working for a behemoth like Microsoft is you don't work for the behemoth. You sort of work for a smaller part. You work on the things that you own. And so, when I left Microsoft, I had a team of about 400 people. When I joined GoDaddy, I got a team of about 400 people. When I came to Life360, the company was about 400 people. So the things, things are different, but things are also the same. And I think humans also are a consistent thread. And so, while I have a founder here at Life360, at Microsoft, you'd have, the engineer who had started, the project. You always have people who have that history, that vision that brung things into being. And you're always, I'm always coming at it of like, okay, well, that's great. What's next? How do we drive that next wave of growth? And so I think it's, finding similarity and also finding what do you need to do that's different? How do you need to adapt? And for me, the need to adapt, that's like what's exciting and learning. That's what was exciting at Microsoft when the cloud came or mobile came or those other things that caused us to radically transform ourselves. And so this was, again, sort of like, what's that reinvention? What do I bring? What have I learned? And how do we reinvent both who I am and how I lead for this scale? But also, how do I bring those learnings along?
So two kind of questions around the transition to Live 360. One is, I'm just curious, like, I don't think I've ever asked you this, even like privately, but like, did you know that you were first in line for the CEO role when you took the role at 360? Like, was that like a part of the discussion from the get-go, or did you position yourself that way?
It
Um,
was, I would say, it was a minor part of the conversation. Chris,
it
for a
was
long
not an
time,
expectation.
say it again.
It was not an expectation.
It wasn't an expectation, and Chris wanted to make really sure it wasn't an expectation. And it's not why I chose the job. Actually, I chose the job over an immediate CEO opportunity.
Interesting.
And I chose it because I was more interested in the problems and opportunities that Life 360 had, its potential to impact the world, the momentum that it had, how many people loved it and how many people didn't know about it. That those two things together was very, very exciting to me. And so I chose it for the substance, not for the career opportunity, because there were shorter paths. If I really cared about CEO, there were shorter paths. Chris was transparent back then, both publicly and privately, that he didn't want to do it forever. But he said to me, I'm not going to make any promises. I don't know when I want to leave. I don't know if I leave, if it's you. I'm hiring you to do this job now, and you should take it based on that. And that fit with how I was thinking about it. I was doing it because this was the problem space that I wanted to work on. This was the product that I wanted to work on. And the CEO possibility was a sweetener, but not core to the deal.
So second part of the question, were you specifically interested? I mean, the way that I think of your career, not having been there for we didn't get to know each other until more recently. But you've always built technology for people. Like you've always been kind of like building things for real end users, but in a very different kind of buy mentality, right? Like kind of in work scenarios, in like small business scenarios. And then you go into Life 360, which is very much what I consider to be like the heart of the care economy, right? Like this is about your family, it's about the people that you love. And this is about like, a very, very vulnerable, like worries, right? Like this like, just like really gets at this like lizard brain part of caretaking. Was it like, were you specifically interested in the company, the sector, the user? Like, what was the thinking there?
Yeah. I definitely wanted to work on things that were important to me personally and impactful. And the sector I'd been looking at was healthcare.
Hmm.
And, I talked with some recruiters about my interest, and so they knew sort of what I was looking at. Meanwhile, my husband and I travel with our family and our dog. I won't leave my family out of it, but it was the dog that got lost on a trip. And it was like a traumatic thing. We went, we were in Vegas. We went to an exhibit that we couldn't take him to. We left him at a fancy doggy daycare. We got back, he was gone.
Oh,
He had escaped. And he's not an escape artist. He actually escaped, came around to the front door, and we saw this on the cameras later, and like stood there for a while. And then when nobody came to the door, he sort of went off in search of us. But we camped out. My husband and I camped out in front of that daycare for a couple of nights in sleeping bags. And we could go inside. The doggy daycare is open. They've got their staff 24 hours, so we could go inside and get a cup of coffee or something. But we did that for a couple of nights before we ended up getting him back. We did get him back, but I started to research trackers. It was the first time that I was sort of interested in this kind of world of how do you keep your family safe. I'm not a worrier as a parent, so I had never really discovered Life360 as a parent. But I discovered a device that Life360 had bought, Geobit Pet Tracker. And at that time, the product had like 2 days battery life. And I know myself, I'm busy and I'm distracted. There was no way I was going to keep a 2-day device tracked. And I thought, well, this won't work because I won't be able to do the work to keep it going. And I made an offhand comment to my husband that, like, I should go work on that to make things like this more mainstream so that people like me can get the benefit. And then Life360 called, and I was like, wait, maybe there's something here.
Huh. So let's actually go into product because the one of the things that I wanted to talk selfishly about the category and the user. One of the things that I realized when I saw all the questions that people put in the Luma is that they really want to know how you build and sell this thing. And so I'm just gonna like jump into it. And the first is, so I read Life360 crossed 88 million monthly actives.
We crossed 100 million. 102 was at our last quarterly earnings, so 102 million.
So how far behind is my number? When did I get?
Yours was, I think that was,
Is it like
trying to think.
four?
I think that was Q3 last year, maybe.
Okay. So you crossed 100 million plus monthly active users, largely through word of mouth.
Largely.
Is that, I mean, is that real? Like how, literally, like how did you do that?
Yeah, big props to our founder, Chris Hulls, who brought the business up. It was around 50 when I joined, around 50 million. It starts with having something that is really compelling, that gives people a reason to want to use it. He also made a very smart decision to go the freemium route. It's one of the reasons that I joined the company. I was a converter to freemium back from when I was at Microsoft. We bought Yammer largely because it was freemium.
I remember.
So it's a business model that I believe in and I see works, which means you deliver value to members before you expect to get something back from them. And I think when you deliver something of value and you make that widely available, it earns you a lot of word of mouth. And then it gives you an opportunity to say, we already have a relationship. What's the value that I need to provide to earn a dollar, to earn a paying subscription in our case?
So you have like a great product and a freemium story. So how do you actually get parents talking about it? Were you like incentivizing? Was this just happening organically?
It was largely organic. It was largely organic. So we haven't done a bunch of referral campaigns and those kind of things. We've played around with that, but it hasn't been a significant part of our motion. There was a point in time that we built a really great social presence. There was a point in time where there was like a teen rebellion, where the kids, the people being cared for in that case, were saying, "Hey, we don't want these restrictions. Boycott Life360." And Chris did a really great job at parlaying that moment and turning it into a huge win. He got on TikTok, which was a newer platform then, and engaged directly and was very transparent, very vulnerable, and heard them out, and then used the software to come up with something that met their concerns. And we invented a feature called Bubbles, still in the product today, that gave teams a way to say, like, you can know generally where I am, but not specifically for a period of time. And that kind of won people over to his side. People felt valued, they felt listened to, and that was a big step function in our growth and our growth history.
So there were a lot of questions around like safety, trust, privacy. People are, I mean, yeah, this is like a bigger conversation around being tracked out in the world, right? Like ring cameras and like
Yeah.
tracker and personal devices and like, surveillance cameras, etc. So like this is like a much bigger conversation. But like 360 is like a part of it, right? Like you are part of the sector. So how do you think about that both from like your customers, right? Like on behalf of serving the customer, right? And also just sort of more as a technology industry, which is maybe
For me,
unfair. Like the bigger question is maybe unfair to put on one person, but like I am curious how you think about it.
yeah, I really think these things start from the customer value perspective. What is it that you're trying to get? And what does it take in order to deliver that and to deliver that in a way that is consistent with uh, privacy and transparency and the thing that people care about? I'm not a protective parent. I wasn't worried about my kids. I actually wasn't a Life360 user before I joined the company. But when I started using the product, what I discovered is that my life got better and easier. For me, it's not making sure my kids are safe. For me, it's finding when my husband is bringing lunch. He's in charge of all the, keeping us all healthy and fed and those kinds of things. And so knowing, hey, he's headed home from the gym. I don't need to go get myself some food. He's got me covered, was great. And so what I discovered was that the value of that convenience was well worth it. The next question is, well, what am I giving up? And the thing that I want to know is I have control over my location, that the company is using that location data in ways that benefit me and don't harm me. So I think there are misconceptions about what we might, what companies like ours might do with data or things like that, but we have very strict and very transparent policies about how we use data. We use them for things like understanding patterns around crash detection or driving behavior that help us improve the product. We don't share them with anybody we're not authorized to share them with. And we actually have just improved our privacy center so it's even easier to discover exactly how we're using it and to make choices in the app. And so, I think if you have control over that, if this is something where you get benefit, you understand how that data is getting used, and you're getting value from it. What we know is that 100 million people make that choice every day. And I think more and more people make those choices for the same reason that I give my phone number at the grocery store.
Mhm.
It saves me $5. They're probably going to stock the foods that I like and not the foods that I don't like. That seems like a win to me. And so, that's an important value exchange done transparently with privacy in mind.
Is there a difference in how you build product now versus in the past? And just thinking about like how intimate this technology is, right? Like, it really gets at like the core of, like I said, like my deepest fears.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not a tracker for the record. Like I don't, I also kind of like know where they are at all times. They're like, they're little, they're kind of not super mobile. But we haven't gotten to the point where like they're not driving around, they're not going anywhere without me. Um, but it's still like absolutely, oh my gosh, I want to talk about fear in a minute, but you guys did a campaign, was it like a year ago? The ad about our worst fears, what I thought was like absolutely hilarious because I feel like somebody opened my brain and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna share this link with y'all. Just for the record, I put it in my newsletter and then immediately got response like, how dare you? That is like so, like those are my real fears. You should not be making fun of them. I was like, I thought it was funny. But okay. So has the approach to building slash communicating with your users changed for you and how versus like your kind of business user days?
For me, I always think software design is sort of an intimate act, that the way that I come and that I approach software is really understanding not people as they want to be, not people as they, wish they were or say they want to be, but really observing what do people do? What's the observable needs that they have? I think that was one of my paths to success when I was designing at Microsoft. It was certainly transformative in how we approached website design at GoDaddy, very differently than how the industry had been doing it before. And so some of those ways of thinking about humans, and again, not what parents should do, not what parents say they want to do, not what kids do or say they want to do, but in fact, what do we observe? How do we understand people from their real behavior? That's, I would say, a consistent through line. I think what's different, and it's not different just in, how I've come here at Life360, but I would say it's different as technology and the practice of software design has changed, is our ability to understand people's behavior at scale. I think it started for me with the shift to the cloud, and being able to observe, both people's routine behaviors and then how people respond to things that we do in the app and make informed decisions based on those behaviors. When we shipped, for years, we shipped packaged product, we shipped Office, we sent it off, and we knew how people were supposed to use it, how we imagined using it, but we didn't really know how they used it. And we could go out and do studies and sort of observe them. But then when we moved to the cloud, we're like, we could see immediately, did they actually value that feature that they said that they wanted? Did they actually engage with it? If they didn't, where in the process did we lose them? Did we lose them at the intent, or did we lose them because the experience was too complicated? And so I think that transformation of being able to experiment at scale and really learn from user behavior, is, it's something that I came into Life360 with, but it certainly is a million miles away from how we built software in the 90s.
What do you know, and like what can you tell us about your customers? Like what is observable about your users? And
So the
shareable. I
first,
mean, I don't know what you can share.
yeah, the first thing that I'll say is that a lot of people think that our users or our customers are parents. And I think one of the reasons that we've been successful is that we really make a product that works for more than the parent role. If we were not giving value to the whole family, if we weren't giving value to the kids and other family members, I don't think we would have the longevity. It would be very hard for us to get to 100 million people if it was adversarial between, if we were parental control software. We are
Yeah.
not parental control software. Maybe the most shocking thing is that nuclear family, sort of that the configuration with parents, especially with teenagers, is about a third of our user base. It's a much higher percent of our paying user base, but our active user base is actually quite diverse. There are young couples. We had a customer panel with, young couple, a couple that isn't co-located. They live across the country from each other, and she uses it while they're on the phone together and watching him drive because it feels, it's like being with him in the car. And
Uh-huh.
so there's all sorts of ways that people get value of connection for coordination and the safety benefits that has much broader appeal than nuclear families. And then within the families that we serve, it really is about having that balance between how we serve the parent and how we serve the kid. If I'm a teenager in today's, I mean, I know how I was as a teenager back when I was a teenager, like it's beneficial to me to know when my parents are coming home. Have they left the restaurant? Is an important signal. It is an important signal. And, parents and kids both know that everybody has the transparency. We know statistically that parents speed more than kids as drivers. And that turnabout it's one of the things that makes us successful, that we are not for the parents over the kids. We're really for for the family and for the non-families that use us every day.
Who do you think that you sell to? Like who's the sort of like tip of the spear when you're sort of like acquiring a new customer, like a new family or like a new kind of unit of people?
Yeah. I'm going to start this question a little bit backwards. I'll say when we are selling, right? When we are actually trying to convert members that are in our base, we do see higher adoption from sort of the mom role. Sometimes we talk about the family organizer, but it does skew towards that, parent age female. When we're attracting customers, we certainly get strong growth from that cohort. But we also see, a lot of kid to kid. So Again, in one of our customer panels, we had a teenager talking about how his family got Life360, and he was the one who brought it into the family. You say, well, why would a kid want to get tracked? Well, he knows that his friend is allowed to go to the mall, and he's wasn't allowed to go to the mall. And the way his family got comfortable with that is they had him on Life360, and he got more freedom. And so he said, hey, if I get Life360, if we get Life360, can I have that extra freedom? And that's one of the common patterns that we get adopted through. So it's different from different people, and because we're largely word of mouth, it's not necessarily us selling. We don't do a lot of targeting and marketing to that person, but our members do, right? Our the word of mouth works really at all levels.
How do you make sure that your customers love the service?
Lots of ways. We spend a lot of time. AI has been great for helping us digest huge amounts of feedback. With 100 million members, we get a ton of signals, both behavioral signals, as well as direct feedback, reviews, calls into support. And so we digest that and look at the things that members care about, what they are excited about, what they're frustrated about. And we're constantly sort of coming up with ways to make the software better. We know people worry a lot about battery. We know they worry about privacy. We know those things, and we act to address those things on an ongoing basis. It's a sort of a constant commitment to be improving.
I gave you a heads up that I wanted to ask you this, but I'm just curious. So you're a parent. Um, you are a caretaker, but have sort of shared caretaking responsibilities back and forth with your husband. You can talk about that. I'm not going to. But you've been in like lots of different sort of you've had lots of different views into like parenting. Um, what have you learned about families and like parenting that like from your job that surprised you and maybe didn't know before?
Yeah. I think I had a picture of the type of parents that would use a product like Life360. I had I don't know, maybe a judgy view that these kind of solutions were for those kind of more protective parents. And I talk about myself as the second parent, my husband being the primary parent. Leslie alluded to my husband being the primary caregiver in our household. But we're not worriers. We've been very our kids are big now, and they've
Oh,
survived. 19 and 27. And
are they still
so
on? Are they still getting tracked?
they are absolutely tracking us and also on the map. I would say that I don't really think of it as getting tracked, although it technically is. But we do it. I like to know. Is my daughter home? I don't want to call her when she's out on a date. I'd rather call her when she's home. When my son's traveling, he goes to school on the East Coast when he's traveling. It feels good to know when he landed at the airport. And they like to know what we're up to and what we're doing. And if we speed, they like to give us a hard time. So they're definitely on the app. They weren't on the app as kids because it was before I sort of discovered that world. But that was like for me the real discovery. There are a million different types of parenting, and um, I think there aren't right answers and wrong answers. I think you can do all the perfect things and have outcomes that are different than you expect. And you can do lack of intentional things. I think we were not the most intentional parents and still have really good outcomes. But tools like Life360 can work for a huge diversity of parents. So I would say, I've learned to really understand that many different kinds of parents uh, can be really successful with many different strategies, including the use of technology, both fear-based and freedom-based.
Um, I had not thought about, this is a entirely like moment in life for me, but like I thought of it as like a fear-based product. And only now that you are talking to me about it, I'm like, actually, no, I can see how this is a freedom product for the user. I'm just the wrong user because I have like, it's just a stage of life thing.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Like I didn't think Life 360 was for me. Even when I joined, it was about the dog. Like it was like, oh, I would like to have this product for my dog, but I didn't think of myself as using it for my family.
Yeah.
It took me maybe 3 or 4 days to be a total convert. I'm going to try to convert you. Try it with your significant others. Try it with your parents. Try it with your siblings. What you find is that it feels really good to be connected in this passive way. You don't need somebody to call you and check in all the time, but it's nice to get that like, oh, that's what they're up to. It feels really nice. And in a world where there's a lot of trust and when you're not worried, but just value that sort of connectedness. I mean, I think that is the secret sauce that has propelled us. You asked in the beginning, what's driven that growth, and we talked about word of mouth, but like what's under that, I think, is the sense of connection and love that people experience when they're looking at their loved ones on the map.
Okay, so then I feel like Life 360 is going to explode and I should buy some stock because I feel like that is the big crisis of our lifetime is like a lack of connection.
Yeah. We increasingly think of ourselves as a connection product over a safety product. Safety is still an incredibly important value prop.
Yeah.
We're continuing to invest in that, but the magic is that feeling of connection.
Do you think that there are, so I actually before I ask that, are there scenarios like how are folks using Life 360 for aging parents?
So historically, we've seen this sort of organically when our founder is maybe patient zero here. His mother has he's had a lot of concerns about sort of supporting his mother as she ages, and has always had her on the app. And so it's always been, in some ways, in the old days, like an off-label use case. But increasingly, we see people, especially, our target audience has been that sort of parents
Yeah.
with teens. And it's not long after you have teenagers that your parents start to sort of wrestle with their own health risks and those kind of things. And people add their parents organically. We made a decision, I think it was last year, we made a decision to lean into aging parents, and we're just starting to work in that space. This has been very much a learning and sort of building some baseline fundamentals. We know that the dynamics are different when you're inviting your parent into the app than when you're inviting your kid into the app. When you're inviting your kid into the app, you're like, hey, you want the car? You're going to get on this app. It's kind of it doesn't need to be a two-way decision, even though we think it's really important to make sure that kids are getting value out of it too. When it's your parent, parents say, well, I don't want you to know where I am all the time. I'm not a baby, and I don't want to do this. And so we know we have to earn the value for that person. It can't be for the young person who is forcing this upon their parent. That will never work. And so we've been doing the work to really understand how do we give value to everybody in that circle. That's our model. Our family model is the circle model. And so, for example, we've just delivered an experience called morning check-in. These were always things you could do. You could always look at your app and send a little note to somebody and say, effectively say good morning. You could always do it. But what we're doing differently is now we're observing when people in the household are not co-located, they don't live together, so they're not going to say hello in the hallway. We observe when a person wakes up in the morning and they start using their phone, and we give a little nudge to the other person to say like, hey, they're up, say good morning. And so we're sort of taking something that happens organically, but not often enough, and we're giving it a little nudge. And we're saying like, hey, this is a good time, right? This is a good moment.
Yeah.
Um, the plan for that is, it's one thing to know that somebody is awake. It's another thing to know like, hey, they haven't engaged with their phone in a day, or they've engaged with their phone, but they haven't left the house in 3 days.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of experiences, and we want to take our time and make sure we get this right. But those are the, as we build with the notion of the care economy, as we think about getting into supporting people with aging families, really being able to understand the signals that matter to families and that matter in this dynamic, and how do we do it in a way where everybody's getting value. The live alone, aging grandparent is feeling more connected. They see where their family's at. They're getting more of those everyday easy interactions. And there's a safety net.
I think like the biggest realization that I am having right now is that when I think about the care economy, like I maybe as an investor, I'm sort of defaulting to the caregiver who is like in the moment feeling the most acute pain and therefore the easiest to convert, right? Like the sort of it's like the most immediate, most acute like moment of need. But they're actually not the customer. It's the receiver of the care that like, can so easily be overlooked in like the sort of because they don't always, with little kids, they can't always advocate for themselves. With like aging adults who are like, don't want to be treated like children. Like, um, so I love how you talk about kind of thinking very appropriate for a company called Life360 to like think holistically about like, hey, there's a lot of players that are kind of a part of this space, opportunity, whatever you want to call it.
We're
I think,
serving them. I mean, they're all our customer.
yeah.
Um, and I'll draw the through line. We started with where did my career start at Microsoft when I
Yeah.
was working on enterprise software. You know, it was very clear to me, even in those days, that the IT department was the buyer and the everyday frontline, office worker, guy with a job was all equally the customer. And if I served one and not the other, it didn't work. And the magic is designing for the relationship. What does each of those people need? And how does that relationship between them get impacted by technology? How does technology improve that relationship rather than degrade it? And that sort of followed through to my work with small businesses when it's both the small business that wants to make money and the customer they serve. It's actually their customer. If you're building a website, it's the user of that website that has to be engaged and be delighted in order for the small business to make money and feel like you're doing a good job. And then, in the case of our circles, it's every member of the family. So that's one of the things that's held constant.
When you zoom out from like Life360 and think about like the broader care economy as it is emerging, do you think that is it truly one category or is there like very concrete differences between these like moments, right? Like sort of childcare, health, aging, grieving, household management. Like, is this like one big old category or are we missing like key differences?
I think both things are true. I tend to think of these things as fairly fluid.
Mm.
Life 360 is a good example of, we have relevance to all of these sort of any kind of situation where there's a relationship, a close relationship, a caring relationship, we have relevance.
Mm.
But in order to do a good job, we have to create different experiences for young families with young kids like yours, families with teens, families with aging adults. So you can't just do the one size fits all and be successful. So it's both that
Speaking
cheating.
of families with young kids like mine, I just want to give a shout out to my 7-year-old and the babysitter because she was having the most spectacular like tantrum before we started this call. And like you could hear her screaming and we managed it. We handled it. She's doing okay. I have not heard her once. They haven't even walked in here. This is like such a big success. Okay, I'm done with my like moment of celebration.
It's good to celebrate it. It's good to celebrate. Parenting is a hard job.
Oh man,
And being a
it's
kid
the
is a hard
hardest.
job sometimes.
It is the hardest, most humbling job. And on that note, so what I told you this in advance, and like I have this little side quest for myself because I am a little more public, right? Like I write and I'm very online. And my like the core of my or like the height of my career has coincided with being a mom. Like it really all like the last 10 years have been the most professionally prolific and also when I've been a serious caretaker. And I feel like there are too many stories out there of how you do this. Um, that don't get told, right? Like I feel like we get the prototype and we don't get the real story. And so I was wondering if you would share like how have you navigated this through your 30-year career?
First, I'll say I did not know growing up if I was going to have kids. Like I
Me
had a great
too. Me too, by
childhood.
the way.
Yeah, I was raised by a single mom, and I saw how hard it was being a parent, and it just wasn't what was important to me. What I saw as a role model in my mom was you go out in the world and you make things. You make you make the world you want. You take care of your family. But I didn't know if I was going to do that, and it wasn't until I met my husband and he was already a parent. So I am both I have a stepdaughter and a son that I say we got the hard way, got one the easy way and one the hard way. And you know, so I sort of got into a situation where somebody already knew how to be a parent. He really had the responsibility. I was the step parent and I was like, okay, that's your deal. I didn't know that I would come to love her and have her be I'm going to cry now. Have
Oh,
her.
I'm
I
right
didn't know
there.
how I would. I didn't know how I would feel. Years down the line, and how proud I am of her, and how exceptional she is.
You're like, seriously,
But,
nobody cries
um,
alone. Like, take a breath. Like, good fall forward.
Um, but that sort of helped me because I didn't have to think about what does it mean for my career. It was very clear he was going to be in charge. When we had kids, the decision to have kids, to have our son was very much like, okay, if you want to do this, you're still in charge. Because I was already a leader at Microsoft, I was already a workaholic, and I didn't really want to change that. And I didn't really think I could change that. Like it's in my DNA. And, he loves raising kids. He is great at it. And uh, we have both, I think, really appreciate what the other brings to the table. He likes not having to worry about the taxes and, the money and that kind of stuff. And I'm in charge of building IKEA furniture. And I love that he makes sure that the family is healthy, including me, gets fed and does the dishes and that kind of stuff. And that's our deal. And it has been great for us.
I mean, I don't know if it's one of the most or like the most important decision that you can make in your career is who you choose as a life partner. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And it's not, it's funny. I met him on a dating app, and I remember you fill out the criteria and what you wanted. And I said, like, not a sales guy. My husband's a sales guy. Like, you can't really know what's going to work for you. I think it's very hard to, even in jobs. I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. I never thought I wanted to be a tech leader or a CEO. Like, I didn't know that that was the right path. But along the way, being open to making decisions that don't match what you expect and deciding, being willing to try something and saying, well, if it doesn't work, then I'll do something different. But, that's allowed me to have a career that wasn't my planned career and to have a family that wasn't my planned path.
I could cry. Like, this is so special. Um, we are kind of getting to time. If you have 5 more minutes, Lauren, we can like keep chatting a little bit because I'm curious if anybody in the audience has burning questions, including Sumit's 13-month-old. I feel like the chat should have a photo function so that we can take a look at him. Um, so if anybody has questions for Lauren in the audience, just like pop them in too. Yes. Seriously, I would love to see him. I love little babies, especially that I can give them back now. Um, so any questions for Lauren? And in the meantime, I I will ask you a final one. So there's a lot of founders in here. We talked a lot about building and selling and communicating. But I'm curious what thoughts you have. You're also a very occasional angel investor. Please don't plug Lauren. Don't everybody hit her up. You can just go through Graham and Walker because she's an LP in our fund. But you do occasionally angel invest. And now you are a leader in this category. So I'm guessing you're getting hit up a lot. So what advice do you have for founders that are building and fundraising in the space today?
I do think working with, I mean, this is going to sound like a setup, but I do think working with a great VC who knows your path and your journey is great. Uh, I think angel investors are good for moral support, but they don't tend to have the level of expertise that VCs do, the level of connections, the level of support. And so I've been really impressed with the a number of VCs that I have sort of gotten to know over the years and the support that they give founders. Founding is hard. It's a lot like parenting. It's a lot like parenting, and it is emotional and it is challenging. And so having great support and like you said about picking a partner, picking a VC and someone that you want to be in a relationship with is it's an important decision. And the right thing for one person is not necessarily the right thing for another.
Do you find that there are pockets within the care economy that are really overhyped right now? And conversely, are there kind of pockets that are not getting enough attention, investment, and product?
I think I don't have a good enough lens of who's getting the hype. I'm not oriented towards the hype. My orientation is really around the customer need. I think that people like to skate to where the money is and where money is already being made. I like to skate to sort of look at what are the problems that people are experiencing that maybe people aren't paying attention to enough. And so I think if you're looking for opportunities, observe the world around you and look at what's frustrating. Look at what people are uh, don't have solutions for, as opposed to the thing that everybody says, "Oh, this is the next great thing that we're sure is going to change the world."
And when you do that, you can send me a pitch deck that is hopefully not built by AI. Okay, everybody. I think we're at a good stopping point. Lauren, this has been so fun. I don't know if you've been looking at the comments, but this is one of the most like beloved conversations we've hosted. Like there's so much love in the comments right now. So thank you for your candor and for
I'm
sharing
I'm
so
happy
much.
to do it.
It's so fun. Um,
I'll just add as a finish thing. Thank you for inviting me. I think one of the reasons why I want to spend time with you and with the community that you've built around you is that you said something when the first time that we ever met about investing being about making the world the way that you want it to be, bringing the products into the world that you care about. And I'm excited to support and hopefully energize the people who are leaning into that. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. That means the world to me. Everybody, we will be back in September. I don't have a speaker yet, but I will figure this out. Thank you so much. Oh, look, I have a kiddo there. Hello, Molly's son, daughter again. Oh, sorry. We can't see you.
Maybe.
Cool. Yeah, all good. Um,
Thank you.
Molly is the founder of Recess, an Austin-based company in the uh, uh, camps. It's not camps. There's a different word for it. Anyways, you guys should connect. Okay. Really great to see everybody.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Lauren. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Bye.